Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. I'm joined by the Twitch chat, and today we are going to be looking at all of the stat information, actual information, graphs, charts, context for all of the Age of Sigmar tournament results post the new GHB. So if you weren't aware, for some reason, Age of Sigmar got its new General's Handbook, which is its seasonal rules, in the summer of 2025. And we're now a few weeks in. I think we're about 5, maybe 6 weeks in to these event results, and that's where Warhammer Rob, much better Rob than me, puts all that information together, and then we start to break that information down. I would say one of the things to always remember when you're looking at these stats, when you're listening to me do the stat show, or when you're looking at any other aggregate sites, because there are a bunch of aggregate sites out there, that context is really the key bit here that's really important. You may absolutely not agree with my context, so do jump into the comments below, because I know lots of people like having a good old say about what their takes are, what their hot takes are, or any of those things, and there's a lot of comments, so it's worth talking about it. But there's context to all this information, as well as information. And sometimes I think like a screenshot just put into a Discord group or just on a website doesn't quite deliver enough context. That's why I do the stat show every single Monday. I read through all the 5.0s and 4.1s. And that's why we've been developing this system for several years, because I think there's a lot to break down here. And also, the way the conversation develops is also really important as well. Take a bit of leadership. If you are watching this, and if an army is too much or an army is not enough, take a bit of leadership. Develop that conversation with your group and fandom. Let's say we're going to be talking about Iron Jaws as an example, right? Let's say they're not doing very well. Take some leadership on that. What can you be doing better? What things can you all be pointing toward, like helping each other out with it, versus just, we're rubbish, let's be nihilistic. Let's not be nihilistic. Not that I think the stats are going to show that off, but be positive about your hobby. Otherwise, your hobby isn't going to be very fun. That's what I'm trying to say. Be constructive. I guess that's the right way to put it. Anyway, this is the information. We have results taken from 12 countries. Don't forget, we're super early into this General's Handbook, generally considered to be super popular. So this will increase over time, okay? So results taken from 12 countries. We record events from 9 different websites. So we have more than anyone else. It's also worth pointing out, more than anyone else. We should also talk about the methodology. It says down here, the results that we take are only from 5-game, 2,000-point events, right? And these are from the 14th of the 6th, 2025 to 31st of the 7th, 2025. That's in English numbers. So Americans, you might be a bit confused there. The reason that this is important is there's been a big push by Games Workshop to put all of the event running through something like best coast pairings. The problem is with that is it doesn't really work very well for some countries, and it doesn't really work well for some events that some people are trying to run. And there is just a much better website like Malarkey, as an example, which is a Swedish website, which tracks a lot of data. So some people don't want to be forced or coerced into it, so people just don't use it, which is super okay. We only take results from 5-game events, and the reason for that is because games 1, 2, and 3 generally are statistical noise versus like anything of any quantitative value. So having run a lot of Age of Sigmar events, maybe at this stage more Age of Sigmar events than anyone in the world, but definitely having run a lot of Age of Sigmar events, all world events, and also attended a lot of events, one of the things that it's worth noting is that really you get the meta / kind of high-end, high-skill expression players playing around games 3, 4, and 5. Those produce much more interesting data sets and really starts to let you know how armies play against each other, versus like Jimmy with his first ever army against Barry, who doesn't really give a fuck if he wins or not. He's just here to skull beers. So which is fine. And also, I really believe those people should play as many games as they can. Okay? They're the best people. All right, so that's how we take the information. One-dayers, I don't think, are very useful for us understanding how armies perform, which is why we're here. So we got 50 events. A list of events included will be published on the Discord, but also it should be published on the website as well, so thehonestwargamer.com. Over the past 5 weeks, I think it's 5 weeks, we have 1,250 players and over 3,000 games. This is not yet, I would say, this is the bare minimum. This is the earliest I would like to really be covering stats data. I think it's really obnoxious to see people put in stats data out week 1 and week 2. I think that really doesn't give enough time for enough data points. So this is where we can start to talk about it. Anyway, so that's the basics behind the stats. Let's dive into it a bit more. Okay, before we look at the win rates, we are going to look at the missions that TOs, tournament organizers, them bastards, have decided to choose when they've been running events. Now, obviously, I have a video where I talked about the battle plans that I would personally be choosing, but also the ones that I think would be better for you to play or have more fun with over the course of the season, which is a video you can go watch. But we can see that it's definitely the two that I said would be not great to play, Noxious Nexus and Paths of the Fae at the bottom, both because the deployment map is bad for Noxious Nexus, and Paths of the Fae has a weird teleporty mechanic, which, even though it's just been recently FAQ'd, I still think it's not particularly fun in any way, shape, or form. Those are low down. But the ones that are definitely much more popular are Surge of Slaughter and Roiling Roots. The reason this is really important to cover at the start, before we talk about anything else, is context about which armies and why armies might do well. When you have all the missions have one objective in the middle of the board, things like Gargants probably are pretty good, because if there's only one objective, put 4 Gargants on it, your opponent can't score the primary objective for many turns. In this case, 4 of our top scenarios, I think it's 4, have 5 or 6 objectives on the board. So they are a lot of objectives, and the objectives also in this season are more spread out than they were previously. Scoring is also much different this season than it was last season. You don't have to hold literally the top 4. Thank you. Literally the top 4 have 5 or 6 missions. Objectives. This season, you don't need to hold as many objectives as you previously did, because before it was hold 1, hold 2, and the bonus points you got were for holding more. Now you normally get a lot of points for just holding 1. Sometimes you get some bonus points for holding another, and holding more is normally worth very few points. So you can really focus or not focus on doing that, and instead focus on destroying your opponent's army or limiting their ability to score. Of course, there's going to be players and also results where players just scored massive points because they did all of those things. They killed the enemy army. They reduced how easy it was for them to score by taking away all their bits. But also, they also scored everything at the same time. Sure, they're going to do both things at once, right? But it's worth noting that A, mobility will be an issue because you need to move around the board, but you don't need to move around the board as much as you once did, which is why I think we've ended up in the tank and spank meta. This is a new phrase that I'm using, and I'm gonna be talking about this in some upcoming videos. Effectively, we've got armies which full send, so they spank, and then it's got armies that do really well at like taking it and dishing it back. And they've ended up in a pretty good position. 2 examples I can think outright are Cities of Sigmar and Cruel Boys. They have the ability to put enough wounds on the board and then do enough damage back that actually they can handle all of the alpha strikes and these big hits that are going to happen potentially. So yeah, Hammer and Anvils, tank and spank. I'm going for tank and spank. It's funnier. Okay, so that's what we're going to call it. So here you can see more objectives, but more objectives does not mean you have a game where it's important to play across multiple objectives. That's something that we've all started to really learn. Although the most successful army, we'll talk about that in a moment, does have lots of teleporting units, either for doing battle tactics. So your little units like Tree Revs, Shadow Stonkers for Daughters of Cain are great examples of units that are cheap. They can move around the board. They can either deny or score battle tactics, which is super easy. So there we go. It's contextual. If everyone was playing Paths of the Fae, how much different would these would the win rates and the results be? So that's the thing worth talking about. So, ask yourself that question in the future. Okay. So before we go and look at the meta stats, I really want to talk about the community as a whole. This is one of those interesting things that I know both me and Rob, who does the stats, are really passionate about. And before I have recorded this section, I've just been having a big chat with the Twitch chat, all of whom are from different parts of the world. They're from different walks of life. And there's a big conversation happening about event attendance and how many people are attending. Okay, so we're going to break this down, and I'm going to give you a bunch of opinionated stuff as well, and I'm going to see what you think about it in the comments for sure. Before we go any further, though, because I think the conversation went a little bit squirrely, and I don't want to get it wrong. Compared to last year, this year, there are 468 more players and 21 more events in July 2025 than there was in July 24. However, there's a problem in being able to compare those things. The reason is that Last year, the GHB was released in July. This General's Handbook, or the General's Handbook for this season, was released basically a month early. And also, it was a new edition that last year as well. Although new editions normally get people excited, we didn't have to change our bases. You know, the way Age of Sigmar is constructed, if you buy a box of models, that's a unit. You didn't have to like change weapon loadouts. There's a bunch of stuff, right? So like, yeah, but that will have changed the data a little bit. So, but it's important to know more people playing this year than last year. So what we're not about to talk about is the game dying or there being less people playing. But what we're talking about is Age of Sigmar's trend towards having smaller events. This is pretty interesting and is part of an ongoing conversation that I'd like to maybe make in another video. And if you'd like to me make it in more detail in another video, please let me know, because I think there's actually a million different factors depending on country, depending on background, a bunch of different stuff as to what's happening here. But let's talk about the big elephant in the room, 40K. 40K is a meme. 40K as a tournament game is like Labubus and Pokemon cards. Pokemon cards, people just buy dozens of packs. You've seen the videos of people queuing outside stores, getting in fights to get the packs, to rip them open, because really it's gambling. Labubus, if you don't know what the hell a Labubu is basically a modern day Beanie Baby, right? Where people just buy them and it's a cool, you know, kind of like a nerd. No, it's not a nerd. It's girly pops, like sign of, I don't know, whatever it's a sign of, right? As an example, okay? So when you are comparing Age of Sigmar to 40K, I think you're doing it a disservice. There are loads across every country of large 40K events. So why are there large 40K events? Why is Age of Sigmar trending to smaller events? I got to say, I think number one is because of that meme kind of stock, in that like you collect a 40K army, you go to the big 40K event, and that's it. I wouldn't necessarily put every 40K player as being generally a wargamer. I'd put every Age of Sigmar player as pretty much being a wargamer. And the reason for that is I think that there's that disparity between the two, in one being a meme stock, effectively, and one not being. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I have been advocating, and I have not been tracking stats, and Rob and me, whenever we've done the Age of Sigmar stats anywhere for the past several years, we've not attributed points to larger events. This is a very early thing that happened in 40K, where the people that did the initial 40K rankings, the ITC, used to be run by a group called Frontline Gaming. They made it so that you got more points for your rankings if you attended a larger event. And they ran the largest events. So if you attended their events, they got bigger, you got more points. Then you go to the next one and you got more points, and then they became bigger, and they were self-fulfilling as a thing. With the Age of Sigmar stats, we have never, ever done that. Instead, we looked at where the most likely place points were attributed at, and you got a certain amount of points for a win, a certain amount of points for the size of the event. And we capped it basically at 50 several years ago, because there weren't any really much bigger than 50. So that was a really sensible choice. So that meant having a big event didn't really get you any extra points. Now, obviously, if you're from America, you can be like, actually, Rob, I really care about the ITC, and we do ITC points. Now, Games Workshop have taken over the ITC. They bought it off Frontline Gaming. And now they have this thing where they have ITC points, and one-day events count towards that, and a bunch of other stuff, which I personally find quite confusing and also just a bit worthless. So I don't know how much stock people put into the ITC rankings or anything like it. But my point is, from a cultural perspective, 40K was definitely pushed towards having larger and larger events. So I think it became the cultural norm. Whereas Age of Sigmar has really been pushed towards what is best for the Age of Sigmar community. And I think we've ended up in a position that's slightly different here. I'd also say that there are, number one, this is an amazing thing so the yellow line that you can see here, this is an amazing thing for the Age of Sigmar tournament consumer, like, which I advocate for. Like, I'm advocating for you. I want there to be more local events than one big event. When I first got into Warhammer, there were these Warhammer Fantasy Battle events. They were massive. They were almost always sold out. They weren't every weekend. It was just like one big one with 80 people at this place. And it was like, okay, is there anything local? No. So you couldn't go. So you couldn't play. So you couldn't have a tournament. Now, that's not the case. We have a lot more hobby stores, which is great. But we also have a lot more like local stores or local groups and little small pockets and communities that are getting together, which I think is great. Like someone in the chat earlier was talking about Switzerland as an example, and they were saying that we have small little groups. They have a small little group that's growing really fast there, which is great. Norway's another good example. Like I know that the 2D6 people in Norway have worked really hard to grow and develop their community, so it's grown massively, which I think is very cool. So there are communities that are growing based on the community leadership that they have, but in somewhere like England or in the US, I don't want to have to travel to Chicago to go to Adepticon or Las Vegas to go to Las Vegas Open if I'm living in Boise, which I only found out about today. But if you're living in Boise, you have a great game store that's just local to you there, and you can just go to that. And if there's an event there every weekend, I don't really know why I would need to travel out of state. I definitely don't know why I would need to travel out of country to play a game. So all of these different communities are slowly starting to develop little local community scenes. And I actually think that ends up being much better for the consumer. Instead of having to go to some massive event and then, travel, accommodation, and all those other things, instead, I can just go to my local little one-dayer or my local two-dayer, and they'd be as valuable as attending a large event, which I think is good as well. I think the last thing to talk about is cost of living crisis, especially here in the UK, although I'm sure it's hitting many people around the world. Travel in the UK, we live in a pretty terrible time here in the UK. So travel in the UK is prohibitively expensive. Accommodation is also prohibitively expensive as well. There's currently a really active conversation talking about Las Vegas failing as an economy because no one, A, wants to travel to America from outside of America, and B, no one really wants to travel to Vegas because they've kept it up in the price. I'd like to be really clear. I think tournament ticket prices in the UK, but also around the world, are probably still too cheap for the amount of labor that goes in. If you think about what happens, there's a table, there's an entire board of terrain that was built and painted, there's people running the events, there's venue hires costs and a bunch of other stuff as well. I personally think that they're too cheap, but everything around an event is very expensive. And so I think also people are making the decision not to go to the one big event somewhere in the country and instead support their local gaming store or their little local community and play those. So I think this yellow trend, this trend to smaller, more frequent, more events locally is great for Age of Sigmar and great for the player base, just to be really clear. And I think that's great to see. I'm actually really happy with this, and I'd like it to settle between like 16 to 50 being more towards the top end. I know there's a lot of countries like Portugal as an example. They'd be stoked to have like a 40-person event. They'd be stoked. They'd be like, that's massive. Serbia, great active community in Serbia as well. We've had a couple of events come out of China recently. They've been around the 16-person mark. Australia is an amazing example. While Australia, you say, oh, Australia, they have a 100-person event. I'm like, yeah, they have a 100-person event in one place that's like 16 hours from the next place, and then at like a drive, and then like an 8-hour flight from the East Coast. So they're very diverse and very split up. So Western Australia having a 50-person event is effectively a whole nother country. So these different locations, and I think this is good, is the TLDR, but I think there's a bunch of reasons as to why. And if you've got any thoughts about it, as I'm absolutely sure many people will, please do leave them in the comments below. Right, next up, now we're getting into some actual info. Meta reps. So this is how popular the armies are playing at the event. So we can see Stormcast Eternals are still the most popular, but they have significantly dropped off from at one point a 12% meta representation. Very, very popular. Obviously, that was post the Age of Sigmar 4th launch. And one of the things I said at that time, and I still think is true now, is we saw a lot of edition churn. So we saw some people or seasoned players leaving the game, and we saw a bunch of new people jumping in. And if you're one of those people, let me know in the comments below. Jumping in and buying Stormcast Eternals as their first army. And now they've started to buy, build, or get a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, maybe an 8th army. Who knows, right? So if everything being equal, thank you to LLV in the chat, everything being equal, an army meta rep would be 4% if all of the armies were represented equally across the board. So some armies are overrepresented, you see those in red, and some of those are underrepresented, you see those in blue. Stormcast and Soulblight Gravelords very recently got a new book. very popular as an army anyway. Lots of people have those models also up there, and the book is also great. Skaven, also popular. Obviously, they got this, they're narratively very involved in this edition. They are the main bad guys of 4th edition. They're also very cool, and also lots of people got lots of models from that big box at launch, Skaven-tide. Lots of people also got that box for free. Shout out to Australia. Now, Slaves to Darkness has had a massive meta rep fall off. They have gone from what was like 10% down to 6%. Let's talk about the most recent event results I covered in the stats video recently. Recent event results recently. I'm sorry for saying recently twice. We have never had a game where I've seen more armies represented towards the top end of the game. When a few armies are good, generally people pick those more to play at events. The meta representation does not represent how popular a faction is, i.e. like how many people own them or buy the book, or it's like, what's your favorite army? My favorite army is Flesh Eater Courts, as an example. It's how many it's what gets taken to an event, and you only really try to take the armies that are good to events. Obviously, other people don't, the Sinesh players. But you do try to take the best, all the better armies to the events. Having no army above 7%, right, in my opinion, indicates that people think that there are lots of armies that you can do well with. And so they're picking the army that they prefer versus picking the army that's good. Because maybe many of them are good. We got the Scourging Around updates, loads of new battle tomes. Maybe that's the situation. So that's what I'm going to put that down to here. And this spread being pretty good is actually pretty popular. Is pretty good. We've always had armies that have floated around the 2% mark. Like Tzeentch have sometimes been much more popular, but normally Kharadron Overlord's not as popular. Hedonites and Slash normally aren't very popular because they're a hobby nightmare. Super difficult to put together. We have seen OCR Bone Reapers be much more popular, so their fall off is that people just don't think they're very good. And even though Fire Slayers are currently a very successful army you can do really well with, they're still not up there in the meta representation because people don't want to buy the models, right? They don't want to buy the models. Flesh Eater Courts were more popular, and they have dropped off as well. And now we've started to see some armies pop up, like Cruel Boys and Iron Jaws. They're basically equal, which I think is interesting because Cruel Boys have a very successful win rate at the moment, and Iron Jaws don't have a very successful win rate as well. Some hobby armies, though, are worth painting. Cities of Sigmar versus Hedonites of Sinesh. It's worth painting up your Cities of Sigmar models because they're pretty good at the moment, so you end up at 4.4%. And then some armies are just always going to be popular, and I really do believe that's going to be Slaves to Darkness, Maggotkin of Nurgle, and Seraphon. Seraphon are an army that are almost resistant. The only time that they were very close to being so bad that no one would play them was in 2nd edition. It was a dark time for the Seraphon fans, but they're fine, and they're up there. So this is interesting, and will be interesting when we talk about positive win rate potentials. So that's the meta rep. It's probably never been this diverse. Crazy good. That's the takeaway. If you have a takeaway, if you go to an event, you're likely to pay the most diverse amount of armies that have ever been available. That's at least from the external factor. If you're talking about internally, how different are the units? In Soulblight Gravelord's case, having just done a bunch of event results, that is a crazy diverse roster. We've seen Vargeists everywhere. Sometimes you see Vengori Lords, Radikar the Beast, a Skirgan Trueblades. Yes, you'll see Vordry and you'll see Blood Knights, but you'll also see Barrow Knights and Barrow Guard. Very diverse as a roster. Skaven, also very diverse. Yes, you're seeing loads of soggy Brood Terrors right now, but also a bunch of other lists as well. Stormcast Eternals, fairly diverse as well, as Stormcast players are trying to work out what they want to do with it, which I think is fun. Maggotkin and Nurgle can't be diverse because Games Workshop doesn't want demons to be good. Slaves of Darkness, I have just read Aaron Newbomb, if he's listening, crazy list that we just saw coming out with loads of Dark Oath models. bunch of the Saves to Darkness lists have been different to what we saw with just the copy-paste Bellacore 20 chosen of the last GHB. So external balance is diverse and internal balance is pretty diverse. And I'm saying this like live. It's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting. Right, let's go look at win rates. If there is a negative to talk about, this is maybe where we start to see this right now. So as you can see, Rob has pointed out that results do not include mirror matches or draws. Okay, so yeah, mirror matches or draws. And we see Daughters of Cain are the most successful army in the game right now with a 63% win rate. Then we have Cruel Boys and Cities of Sigmar at 59. So they are edging over our 55% win rate that we're happy with. And then we have Lumineth Realm Lords and Nighthorn as well in that top bracket. And I'm going to talk about all those in a moment. But down the bottom, we have Idoneth Deepkin. Now, this is super aberrant. We'll talk about that in a sec. Gitz, Blades of Corn, Iron Jaws, and Seraphon at the bottom. I'd like to be clear for people who are about to panic. I have just done a stat show, literally earlier today, where Seraphon got several 4-1s. Gitz didn't feature, actually. And Deepkin, because they have a new book, smashed. They got like 2 or 3 5-0s, a couple of 4-1s. They smashed. So that's fine. Khorne have got a new book. Khorne have got a new book, and they have a section of their book that's so good in their new Army of Renown with all of their special characters that people are already calling for it to be FAQ'd or banned. So while we're not going to see that reflected in the stats right now, we will see that reflected in the stats in the future. And that is the Army of Renown, where you can take lots of different heroes. Okay, for Iron Jaws, I don't really have an answer for you right now, and we'll maybe have to discuss that in the future. Gloomspite Gitz, I think, is a solid army. You take 2 lots of 6 Rock Guts, you take 2 lots of 10 Boingrots, and I think you've got a solid army, and it's not that far below the healthy portion of the pack. So again, I think Gitz is really pulled down by the fact that everyone plays Gitz as a nutcase, and they don't really care about winning at all. Like, that's not what they're excited about. They're excited about just being lunatics. Yes, and we saw at the AOS Masters, which I ran here in the UK, we also saw Gitmob doing really well as well. So there's lots of opportunities there, I think, for Gitz to come up. Deepkin definitely will come up. Khorne will definitely come up. And Seraphon, we've seen posted with Croak a couple of times recently. I think he'll also go up as well. So if we look at the top end, Daughters of Cain. Daughters of Cain are a bit too good. Now, the real question is why. They're a combat-centric force. People are not taking shooters or any of the bow snakes in this force. And instead, they are running Witch Elves, and they have got several upgrades thanks to their Scourge of Garan War Scroll updates for Kuethsa, which has made them much more effective. So this has been very good, and normally you're seeing about 80 bodies on the board, right? Normally you're seeing about 80 bodies on the board, and they are just an amazing combat force in a game, as I said earlier, where you don't necessarily need to be fighting in loads of different locations. They can fight in single blocks, or a doom lozenge, to quote my friend Owen, that they can fight in. And then if you charge with countercharge as a mechanic, you charge one of those units, the other unit can charge you, and there isn't much that can survive against the pure output of Daughters of Cain armies. That said, they're very fragile, so if they get hit, they die. Also, they're pretty fragile to shooting, and we're generally seeing less shooting. Kharadron Overlords have just got their shooting taken away from them. Some armies, like Cities of Sigmar and Lumineth Realm Lords, have got more shooting in their lists, and lo and behold, they're further up the board than other armies. So I'm unsurprised to see that. So Daughters of Cain are good because they're maybe the best combat block out there, potentially. But also, if we go back and look, their meta representation for Daughters of Cain is only 3.2%. It's always been a situation where they have never been very popular. Okay, and we are back to a situation where they're a little bit more popular, but they're played by people who know what they're doing. But they do need to be addressed. Cruel Boys, I don't know if there really is an answer to address these. I think that they made the dirty tricks slightly too reliable. To bring them down from 59% to put them just below 55%. They made dirty tricks too reliable. They have too much health on the board. They have too many units that can do battle tactics. They can just take the new War Scroll for the Gnashtooth, the Soggy, so the Scourge of Garan Gnashtooth is amazing. and can score battle tactics, can deny battle tactics, can do a ton of stuff, can grab objectives. It's just such a great utility piece. Daughters of Cain also have teleporting units as well. Cities of Sigmar is based around teleporting, just worth pointing out as well. So that's a very strong mechanic in the game. So Cruel Boys, arguably, they just have too much on the board. They could maybe just do with a point hike, just to bring it so that maybe there's one less unit on there. But that's Cruel Boys. Cities of Sigmar, I think the one change that I think is necessary is that you see the command core go from being non-unique to make it unique. Cities of Sigmar has had a real rough go of it, I think, personally. I think they've become like this beating stick that people have complained about for the past few weeks to do with the meta. And as I was saying many times, other armies are up there, but no one really focused on it. Although I think, unfortunately, Games Workshop will aggressively knee-jerk response to this. I don't think there's much more than maybe they need slightly less of a unit, or maybe the Pope, as specifically the Scourge of Garan Pontifex, needs a bit of a rules adjustment, and also then just change the things to unique. We can bring them back in line. I think that'd be good. But what's interesting for me is both Cruel Boys and Cities of Sigmar play the same play style. What they do is they build strong defensive lines, they let their opponent hit them, and then they hit them back with everything and delete them. Both of those two armies play the same, and I'll tell you another army that plays the same, Lumineth Realm Lords. Night Haunt. All of these armies are great at what I call the tank and spank meta. They get spanked, so you run over, you try to hit them, and Night Haunt roll 4-ups. Lumineth Realm Lords are like, might as well hit. They got a bunch of saves, and then they counterpunch you. Yeah, thank you, Snipbag. They counterpunch you. Those top 4 armies, Night Haunt, LRL, Cities of Sigmar, Cruel Boys, are all counterpunch spank armies. And the top army, Daughters of Cain, is a better spanking army. They just do more damage the other armies can't handle. That's what that is. So they just tip the line. So I think that's an interesting kind of trend on army archetypes. And then if we look down, we got everything in the mid pack, which is fine. Stormcast Eternals being at 45% is really okay. Normally, with the most players, you have the lowest skill expression. Sorry, the lowest average skill expression. Therefore, they should trend lower. If Stormcast Eternals ever, like they were in the last season, trending towards 50%, they're probably too good. 45% is actually really good. That's where you want Stormcast Eternals to be. Because I just read a ton of Stormcast Eternals, either 5.0s or 4.1s, just this week alone. So they're in a fine position. They're in a fine position. Everything else is in a good spot. Like I said, it's very diverse. Okay? Actually, I'm looking. So anyway, TLDR, I was right, which is nice. But do we need to have these armies adjusted? Yes. Do we need to have them adjusted a lot? A little bit. The big thing I need to be looked at by Games Workshop right now is I need Iron Jaws up. So I need an Iron Jaws adjustment. I want to see something for them as well. Seraphon, I'm a little bit worried about Seraphon in that maybe Croak is fine. Maybe Croak can come back, and obscuring people are going to learn that Croak is okay. But I think the game is at a real, as I've said, this stat show and last stat show, and as I've talked about with the meta rep, there's a lot of armies that can do really well. Yes, Daughters of Cain has got that high win rate, but I think that'll also get tailored off as time goes on. Okay, we'll come back to that. But let me know what your thoughts are. Okay, so these are the meta change for the GHB in 2025. So this is just how more popular an army is and how less popular an army has become. The army that's become the least popular, Blades of Khorne, and the biggest shift is over to Cities of Sigmar. It's fair to say, though, Cities of Sigmar were never good. They've had a Cruel Boys run. When they were first launched, they were pretty rubbish, apart from steam tanks. Then they were immediately nerfed after 2 weeks, and now they've been in the toilet the entire time. I want to make it clear. I know that in the last GHB, several people were doing quite well with running dwarves and also the dark elves for Cities of Sigmar, and they were doing okay, but it was a very select few people, mainly in the US, right? There was very little representation of that anywhere else in the world. So those were outliers. It's like when Tom Guan plays. Just because Tom Guan's playing something, yeah, it was Dylan Thoreau, I think, who was playing them. Just because Tom Guan's playing something doesn't mean it's good. It means Tom Guan's good. As a fair point. right? So Cities of Sigmar have now finally maybe got their place to play on the tabletop, which is good. Cruel Boys, again, that same story, but they've become more popular. Nighthaunt have become more popular. Soulblight have become more popular. But also all of these armies, apart from cities, have got books recently. They got like Soulblight Gravelords, Nighthaunt, Cruel Boys have all got books. Nighthaunt got their book on the way. Had their book? Have I reviewed their book? It's on the way. It's on the way. It's on the way. Blaze of Corn just had the book, and then they will become more popular. Stormcast Eternals, I expect to drop off across the entire edition until we end up with 5th edition, because that's how it works. Big boom at the start of the edition. When they get their book, they should tail off towards the end. Sons of Behemoth down 22%. I only wish it was down more. That would be nice to see as well. And LRL up, that's great. I love to see that. I think LRL have got a really fun army style at the minute. It's got some real play. They don't have to all take tech lists, which I think LRL players will be really happy about. It does feel like you do the Scourging around. I'm going to make another video, but the Scourging around stuff has been such a massive success. Like, you know, kudos to Games Workshop, kudos to the Age of Sigmar rules team. It's been a massive success. We, like I say, both external diversity and internal diversity are up. It's just a better game. You might not, you watching this might be like, actually, Rob, I'm not enjoying it. That's fine. But from like a litmus test kind of like game system, are more units viable and are more armies viable? The answer is yes and yes. Like that's great. That's very rare that I've ever seen that from Games Workshop. So you can't be mad about that at all. Okay, next we're going to look at the positive win rate potential. Jesus, hell, Mary, that's crazy. Okay, so the positive win rate potential is, oh my goodness, this is wild. Is how likely you are to go to a 5-round event and you're likely to win more games than lose more games. This is my kind of like start collecting guide. I'd like to play Age of Sigmar, Rob. What army is good? You're not very good because you haven't played a lot of games. But an army that is most likely to get you more wins than not is Cruel Boys. In fact, it has a 72% positive win rate potential, which is really bad. That's really bad. Okay. That's really cooked. The stars next to the names are the stars next to the names are the armies with the most 5-0s. So you can see Daughters of Cain, Cities of Sigmar, Luneth, Realm Lords, and Skaven have the most actual 5-0s. Okay, so those are the armies that are like getting towards the end goal of winning an event or going 5-0. I think going to 5-0, you've won an own trophy. But yeah, Daughters of Cain, Cities of Sigmar are also up there in the positive win rate potential, specifically Daughters of Cain as well. But this really contextualizes the other win rate table. So while Daughters of Cain are higher by 3% than Cruel Boys, it's really Cruel Boys that are the problem army of the game. Cruel Boys are the real problem army of the game. Like they, just like I say, are too good. They're too reliable in their tricks. They're too reliable in their play style. And I know Cruel Boys players are going to be mad at me, and I'm so sorry about that. Like, it's just, that's what happens. Like, it's slightly too good. Okay? Yeah, you are the problem. I'm already getting attacked in the chat. No, Rob, you're the problem. Okay. Cities of Sigmar are up there, and their positive win rate potential being 67% is also an issue as well. Kharadron Overlord 66. We're going to ignore that because they got a new book, so we're going to put that to the side. Nighthaunt also up there at 62%, and then Fireslayers and LRL. LRL are really skirting, I think, a really good place where their book is currently amazing. Everything for, if you're an LRL player now, shut the fuck up. Like if you play against Cruel Boys and you lose, don't say a word, right? If you win a game, just keep saying how difficult it was and how much of a hard time you had. Your army is in a great spot where it's Goldilocks. It's absolutely able to win events. It's absolutely not showing up as too good on stats. Just keep your mouth shut, right? Like you're in a great spot. But definitely Cruel Boys, Daughters of Cain, Cities of Sigmar all need to be adjusted pretty aggressively. pretty aggressively. Although, if you look, Cruel Boys, even though it has more 3+ wins, you can see that in the red, they don't necessarily hit the 4-1. So they generally go 3-2 a lot, right? But Daughters of Cain, Cities of Sigmar, they're in a really solid spot. And again, they all need adjusting. If we look at the bottom, Stormcast Eternals having a low positive win rate potential is, again, I'm just going to say it, fine. You get a great opportunity to do really well with Stormcast Eternals. They've got a good build. They're not hard to hobby. You can get them on the table easy. You have terrible internal diversity. Terrible. Like, loads of your units just don't work or aren't as good as other units, but it's also because you have 7,000 units. So it's like I don't really know what to say. Like, you know, Games Workshop aren't really trying to make every unit viable in books. So that's why if you are collecting armies, you should probably collect these more like bespoke, like, you know, Daughters of Cain, Sylvaneth, Bone Reaper style armies where they're self-contained. And unfortunately, those armies are a little bit feast and famine, you know, like we're seeing with OCR Bone Reapers as an example. They were good, and now they're just kind of a little bit below good, right? Anyway, positive win rate potential. The laughter at the start, that's a yikes. I haven't seen a 72% in a while. Reminds me of Gargants. That's yikes. Okay, all right, okay. All right, we need to have a little talk about Cruel Boys in the future. All Cruel Boy players telling me to shut up. That's fine. Next article. Oh, I forgot to say. All of these graphs will be on thehonestwargamer.com if you want to go check them out. They're on thehonestwargamer.com. And Rob has written some good context for them as well. Tom's put them on the website, and you'll be able to check all this data out and talk about it all as well. Anyway, meta rep over time. This just shows you how popular armies have become over the course of the edition. This is really fascinating. We've had some real feast and famine. Soulblight Gravelords, as an example. Stormcast Eternals are dropping off. Some armies, like Sylvaneth, have maintained. Some armies have really peaked, like Gits, when they were really good, and then they've dropped off as well. So you're going to continue to see this. Blades of Khorne have only ever been on a downward trend. Hopefully that changes. Cruel Boys are on the big up, which I think is fun as well. Okay, so this is a win rate over time, and this is frenetic in some cases. For instance, Cities of Sigmar, Hedonites of Slaanesh, Cruel Boys, Ogre Moor tribes, Nighthaunt especially, absolutely crazy ups and downs here. So lots of variants that we could go to in the future if you wanted me to. And now we're looking at the largest clubs around the world, specifically from players. So one of the things that Rob is really invested in, and I'm really invested in as well, is, like we said, developing these little local communities, developing and helping grow them. And one of the things is to shout out the clubs. Every single week I do the stat show. I always thank the tournament organizer for running the tournament. And I say, thanks for running the tournament, okay? But now we showcase off all of the clubs. And clubs are great for getting more people into them. So the largest club in the world, or the most people who've played from a club, so make sure you put your club down, has been 2D6, which is Norway. Norway is currently leading as the largest performing or like represented club in this new GHB. There's Tough Crowd, or the Tough Cloud, based in America. Then Gateway Gamers is, who is it? Dimensional Cascader in Canada. And then I assume everything else is the USA, exception of Plymouth Troll Slayers, also down south in England. The largest club in the world is from Norway. One UK club is in the top 10. The remainder are from the USA. Just to be clear, Dimensional Cascade, you are from Canada. I'm pretty certain. Don't get mad at me. And then over half the players in the 24-25 season were part of a Warhammer club. So over half the set players were part of a Warhammer club. Which is cool. And the Plymouth scene should be proud of itself putting out in the work. Yeah, absolutely. There's some, like Glenn, Mark, a bunch of people down there have been making some real efforts to make the Plymouth scene really good, which I think is really cool as well. And also just shout out, we will in the future be doing both player rankings and club rankings, but it's worth pointing out that the most successful club in the world, in the UK right now, is the Lancashire Legion. Just worth pointing out. That's because Warhammer Rob, who does the stats, wants to gloat. So there you go. The most successful club in the UK is Lancashire Legion. So congratulations to them. But this is in the UK. It's worth pointing out. 21 in the world for 51% win rate, as an example. So there you go. ignore that. That's not important. Okay, so those are all the stats. And as I've been saying, the game's in a great place. Definitely, there are armies that are a little bit cooked. Yeah, and maybe with the new Idnet Deepkin, maybe they're a little cooked too. Maybe the new corn stuff, maybe it's going to be a little bit cooked. But never before have I been more confident that Games Workshop is going to do something about that. Over the last GHB, even though several of their changes were bad, right? Because they responded to stuff that had already moved on. As an example, with Ogres at the start, Ogres won like 2 weeks worth of events. Everyone bitched about Ogres, and then Ogres got an unnecessary nerf, which made them basically unplayable until the winter update, where they made the monster trucks good. It's just really silly, and they sometimes don't necessarily respond overly well. I'm going to say they don't respond overly well or very accurately, but they do respond, and that's really important as well. One of the things that they did that was most impressive in the past year is during the Christmas time, they made several different units more playable by updates over the Christmas period. Like we saw Croak, which arguably made it too good. They made Flesh Eater Court slightly too good as well. But they did make updates to bring up armies that weren't very good and made them more effective. So I'm hoping for one of those for Ironjaws specifically. So yeah, the game's in an okay place. I expect there to be changes where the game is better as well. You should have more local tournaments where people are playing, more local tournaments that happen more regularly so you can get more tournament experience in. I don't really have any negatives. So just going to end it there and just say thanks to Rob. That's great. That's pretty impressive. I'd be really happy if I was a member of the Sigmar community right now. I mean, I am, but like, you know what I mean? Like I think you got a lot to gloat about as a community to talk about. I'm sure someone is going to be like, no, actually, that 65% win rate army means it's all fucked, which I don't really believe is true. So let me know what your thoughts are about everything I've talked about here in the comments. Thanks to everyone on the Honest Wargamer Patreon for supporting me. Appreciate you a lot. I hope you've enjoyed it. And we'll see you soon. Bye.